sound-powered phones, and you'd have them on your ears, and then you could speak to the bridge, and you take one and you put it off the back of your ear so you could listen, because you could hear what they call growlers. They were small. It was actually sea ice that had broken free, but it could be 40 feet thick, but it's really low in the water. And as it goes back and forth, it gets a rib gets cut into it. And so what it does is it captures air, and then as it rocks, the air sounds like a big fart. We call them growlers. But you could hear them before you see them. So we always listened. You had to listen. And there was one time they sound power phone came on, and he says, "We have an object. It's dead in the water, DIW, dead in the water. And it's off the port bow. Watch for it." They thought it was traveling at the speed of the current. We thought it was an iceberg. So we're going and going and going. And out of the fog comes this super red T, about 5 stories high. It was a super tanker. And the horn went off. Ooh. Oh man, we're only 100, 150, 200 yards away from it. But it was scary. Oh my God, a collision. Oh my God, we're all gonna die. But it was things like that happened that was really interesting. We got a couple maydays. Our ship really wasn't fast, but we did get one mayday. It was a coal tanker that the front had exploded. I think it was exhaust fans had died and there's a buildup of methane gas, and the forecastle blew up, and it peeled right back like a Jolly Green Giant had cut it. It blew the Wildcat and everything right off, and was on fire. Fighting a shipboard fire is a lot different than fighting a structure fire, because you pump water in, you got to pump water out. So you have what they call submersible pumps that you have to put on board. So when you pump 200 gallons of water in, you're taking 200 gallons and throwing it back out so that the ship doesn't sink. So, it's all coordinated as you go. And it was something I love doing. It was interesting. I went from the almost North Pole. We went into Baffin Bay. We almost North Pole. It was cold, like 47 below zero, and you could stand on the forecastle. You could stand real still for about 2 minutes, and then you go, and you break. You were like an Iceman. Got back. We were stationed in New London at the Underwater Sound Lab, right on the Thames River. And I remember my first time coming back there, I asked the guys hey, where do you go in New London? I haven't been off. I got out of boot camp. I hadn't had any shore leave. I hadn't gone home. I hadn't done anything. I went right to sea. And we were out for 3 months. So I didn't even know New London. What are the hot spots in New London, And they told me this place called the Corral and another place called the Pink Flamingo. This is in the 70s, So I went down to the Corral. I finally found my way around. And we went to the islands. We went south during the wintertime. Summers we spent in the North Atlantic. In the winter we went south. We go down to Florida, and even we went all the way to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. We spent some time in Cuba. We went to Haiti and the Bahamas, Bermuda, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and we made calls. But the whole time we're doing oceanographic research. We're making stops. We even, the USS Philadelphia, a submarine, was launched out of the Thames right across electric boat. I saw the launching of it. And we went to sea with it. And we went down and we did sea trials with it. They looked at us and we couldn't see them of our ship. Even close-ups of us on board. I didn't see them but once. Then we saw them launch a ballistic missile, and we put we put instrumentation down, sonar and beeped and, did what they wanted us to do. We went down and did that. And that was neat. We went to Norfolk, Virginia a few times, firefighting damage control school. Actually, in Norfolk, they actually had a pool with a ship section in it. And then it was set up to leak. And if you took on too much water, it would list. And if it listed 12 degrees, then you had lost the ship. So we had to go through and learn how to stop the leaks. Put mattresses in, the boards, backing, the leaks on piping, how to put oakum, how do you do the wedges and the oakum. And we actually saved our ship, our section, that we did that. They had a big ring outside, and they had a section of a helicopter in it, and they would fill it with oil and light it on fire. And they had sandbags in the cockpit of the helicopter, and they would put you in a suit, a fire suit. They would go high, and they would put the mist over you, and you would walk into the flames, grab the sandbag, and then walk back out. Back then, they didn't have what they call Scott packs that they have today. We had what they called OBAs. It's an oxygen breathing apparatus. And you had a canister that you put up, and you lock it, and then you would start it by holding it, and carbon dioxide in your breath would start this thing producing oxygen. And then you had a mask that went over your face. And we had to learn how to use those. They would send you into a room full of smoke, and you had the guy in front of you, and you'd hold, and you'd have to go through this hoop. And of course, then you're coughing and hacking, and mucus is running out of your nose, and blah, 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 and they would put you through that, and then you go through with the OBA. It was all needed to be done to teach us how to survive in the ocean. I was sent to a place called Group Shinnecock in Long Island that had to do with Moriches Bay and Montauk Point, and we would go, and we had interdictions with drug interdictions and that. We did have a Donzi as a speedboat, which only had about 12-inch draft, and it would come in at low tide, and it would jump the sandbars. And he would throw a 38-foot rooster tail, and he'd zoom, doom, doom, doom. Never did catch him. But I knew he was doing something wrong. He was running something. I do remember we were in the North Atlantic when I was in the Coast Guard, and we had the RCMPs, the Royal Canadian Mounted, call us and said that they wanted us to investigate a boat that was reported to be filtering lobster pots. And so we went, confronted them, and we went on board to look for lobsters. And there weren't any lobsters. There was 65,000 pounds of marijuana in the hull of the boat, down in the bilge area. What he was doing, he was taking the bundles of pot, and he was rowing ashore and hiding it. The whole coast of St. John's, Newfoundland, has a lot of caves, and he was hiding it in caves in St. John's, Newfoundland. And we caught him. So we couldn't enter the harbor. We had to have a person used to come out and take us in. So we pulled the boat in, and the harbor master came out, and they took him in. And the guy was a dentist in Newfoundland, in St. John's. He was a dentist. I remember we were in Bermuda, and in Bermuda, they drive on the opposite side of the road. And before we even left the ship, they told us, do not rent any mopeds or anything else. Do not drive a vehicle, because a lot of the other, Navy and other guys people were being killed because they would get drunk and they would forget to drive on the opposite side of the road, and they get head on and stuff. So we were told not to. And I was a diver, so I had all my equipment and everything, and I'm on my way to Horseshoe Bay, and stuff was heavy. So I saw this little moped place, and with baskets on the side, and I put all my equipment in there, and I rented a moped. And here I am going down the road, and who's right out in front of the restaurant? the chief, and the executive officer, and then the captain, all standing there out in front watching me go by. That was the first time I lost my pay grade, good conduct medal gone. So I got a captain's mast for that. But there was, we lost people too. There was, and it was in Shinnecock Bay, actually. There was a small boat, a skiff. The guy was doing bay scallops with his sons, and he went overboard. And the water still had ice in it, so it's cold. And the water with ice it's probably below freezing because of the salt doesn't freeze. And if you have salt water freezing, it's below 32 degrees. And he drowned. But because it was so cold, we couldn't find him. And about 3 months later, we got a call for what they call the floater. And a floater is a body, drowning victim that's floating. And we went out with the boat, and we have what they call a Stokes litter. It has 2 legs. It's a wire screen mesh on a steel frame litter, and we had to put him in the Stokes litter. It wasn't pleasant. I wouldn't eat lobster for a while because there were lobster on him and crabs, but it wasn't fun. We also, I flew out of Shinnecock in a Sea King helicopter. We didn't have the Chinooks and the nice helicopters that they have today. We had the old Sea King. It was one that you could actually land in the water. If it wasn't too rough, they could land right on the water. And I flew out of Shinnecock in a Sea King. A lobsterman had been hit in the head, a pulley on a swing arm. I guess the ship tipped, as they do in the water. They roll back and forth, and it had rolled, and it had swung and hit him in the head, airlift him out. Helicopter came out of New York, picked me up in Shinnecock, and then we flew out. We got him to safety. I don't know if he lived or not. It's one of those things that you have very good satisfaction in saving people. It was the Vietnam era, and I went in because of the draft. Was the year I went in, my draft number, I wasn't quite old enough for the draft, but my draft number came that year, last year of the draft. I said, I was out of high school. I wasn't sure about college or anything. My brother was Marine Corps. My father was Army. Grandfather was Army. My great-grandfather was military. I was kind of I don't want to go to Vietnam, but I don't want to go to Canada either. It was rough. But I went in the Coast Guard to say, and again, it was to save people, to help. It was rough. It was a rough era. I don't feel that the military, anybody in any service in the military, got the respect they deserved during the Vietnam era. I know I didn't, and I was spit on and called a baby killer in Chicago Airport when I came home on leave to visit my parents. It was even when I got out, I didn't have. They didn't send me to a VA rep. I didn't know anything about Veterans Administration. I just was given my discharge papers and fare thee well with a check. They didn't even fly me home to Illinois. They just gave me a check and said, hey. But I had friends I had made friends, civilian friends. It was a rough time. When I got out, there was nothing. There was no jobs. There was, it was 76. It was 77, 76, 77. There was nothing. If I had Veterans Administration at that time, I think I would have been a lot better off. And maybe I would have stayed in. I'm not sure. It was kind of lost. It was a lost time. And having grown up in Illinois, I knew farming. And I went back to farming. But it only paid $1.75 an hour. And I couldn't make a living on that, so I went to a sawmill. But I didn't get involved in the VA with anything with the VA until I had a friend get me into a machine shop in Manchester, Connecticut, and I had VA benefits for education, and I used that. I bought my first home through the Veterans Administration, but it was the lawyer who did all that. I didn't go to a VA rep. I didn't know any VA reps. I didn't go to a VA rep to get a loan. I had VA benefits, but the place I was working at got me my VA benefits for education for machine shop. It was always somebody else doing the footwork and the leg work for Veterans Affairs. I didn't do anything with until the Brookfield Institute with the Veterans Administration. I got cancer in 2011, and I had to go on Social Security disability. And I worked through that whole system. I even had to get a lawyer and everything else to get disability. And no one told me anything about veterans help. The Social Security Administration sent me a letter saying, "We learned you're a veteran. You have to put in for veterans benefits." And I said, "What? I don't even know what veteran benefits are." "What do you mean?" "Well, you have to go do a VA rep." What? I mean, and that still was rough because I had to fill out all this paperwork, and do this, jump the hoops. Well, now I have to jump the hoops because I'm being forced to by the Social Security Administration, because they're not going to give me any money unless I do. They're going to take my money away, my disability away, unless I go to the veterans and ask for help. So I filled all the paperwork out and I sent it. I mailed it in. And a year later, I got money from the veterans for being indigent. Not because I'm a veteran. It was because I was a veteran, but because I was a veteran I didn't have anything. I praise the Brookfield Institute for making me aware that people care. That is something I didn't know. I didn't know people cared that I had served my country in a time when it was rough. And I praise the Brookfield Institute for that, because it's not something I was aware of. The whole Vietnam era was tough on veterans, very tough on veterans. And there was a lot of anger, and I think there still is a lot of anger from people that are veterans, have rejected the VA because of how tough things were back then. And it wasn't until the Iraqi war and the wars in the Middle East that, the big jets would come home and the veterans were greeted with whoops and cheers, and the VA was there for them. The veteran, I think you came home and you were aware that the Veterans Administration was there for you and to help you, and not give you things, but to help see you get reacclimated. It's a whole different thing from civilian to military. My brother came home from Vietnam and he rejected everybody and everything because he psychologically didn't get reacclimated to civilian life. And that is difficult. When you're military, you have standards, you have things that you need to do. And there's somebody that's telling you, you need to do this, you need to do that. And there's our situations that come up that are traumatic. And to have to live with that trauma without any psychological help is a tough thing. And I'm an alcoholic, and I think it was, and I can't say it was the service and anything like that. It's the whole thing. It's the whole thing wrapped up. And where my escape, instead of getting the correct things in order, my answer was to run from it, and that was to drink. And that's an easy way to go. It's easy to run away with alcohol or drugs. But to get to the point in your life where you have to answer and you need help, if the Veterans Administration is there for the person to give them that reacclimation, then the drugs and the alcohol can go by the way. Tonight, I didn't have that, so I drank. It wasn't until I got comfortable when I got involved with the Brookfield Institute. And I praise them for it. And the people there. And they've done me a world of good. And I thank them.